I was 13 the day she left, not 14. Not almost. 13 exactly. It was a Tuesday. Late September. I'd just come home from school with a note in my backpack about a parent-teacher meeting. I remember thinking, Mom will want to know about this. I even smiled at the thought. She always made a big deal out of those things. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Usually she'd be humming something from the kitchen, barefoot on the tile, stirring spaghetti sauce or warming leftovers. But that day, all I heard was the gentle hum of the fridge and the clock ticking over the fireplace. I called out her name once. No answer. Her purse was gone. So were her shoes. But there was an envelope on the table, and inside it was her wedding ring, taped to a single piece of lined paper. You're better off without me. Please don't hate me. One day I hope you'll understand. That was all. No signature, no explanation, just her handwriting, rushed, familiar, and final. My dad came home 2 hours later. He didn't ask where she was. He didn't even look surprised. He just picked up the envelope like he'd expected it, like it was inevitable. Then he walked upstairs, and the silence returned. I sat there on the couch for what felt like hours. I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just stopped. It's strange how the human heart can break without a sound. No crash, no scream. Just this slow unraveling from the inside. That night, I lay in bed with her perfume still lingering in the sheets. I kept waiting for the sound of the front door, her voice, her laughter, anything to prove she hadn't actually done it. But she had. She left. And she never came back. I stopped telling people I had a mom. At first I'd lie. She's on a trip, I'd say. Or she's taking care of my grandma up north. But lies get heavy after a while, like wet clothes in the rain. Eventually, I just stopped answering, and no one really pushed. I guess people sense when a kid is carrying something too sharp to touch. I grew up, but that night never left me. It clung to the corners of my mind like smoke, not always visible, but always there. Every missed birthday after that felt like a quiet echo. Every school play where I looked for her in the crowd and saw only empty seats, it added another layer. Not of anger, but of absence. That was the worst part. It wasn't rage that stayed with me. It was the hollow. Years passed. I learned to stop hoping. I stopped imagining her walking through the door with a tearful apology. Stopped thinking she'd show up at graduation, or my wedding, or when my daughter was born. She didn't. Not once. And so, when the call came 26 years later, from a hospital halfway across the state, I didn't feel anything at first. The nurse was kind. Her voice was careful, like she was talking to someone made of glass. She's in critical condition, she said. Lung cancer. Stage 4. She listed you as her emergency contact. I almost dropped the phone. Emergency contact. After everything, after all the silence, she still wrote my name. I drove there alone. No music, just the sound of tires on asphalt and the questions in my chest. Why now? Why me? Why? Anything. And when I finally walked into that hospital room, her face was thinner than I remembered. Her hair, all white, and yet her eyes lit up the second she saw me. Not a flicker of regret, just warmth, like she'd known I'd come. And I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I just took her hand and held it. Because sometimes we reach back, not for who they were, but for who we needed them to be. I used to think my mother glowed. When I was little, she had this warmth about her, like a patch of sunlight on the carpet. She wasn't perfect, but she tried. She'd braid my hair before school with shaky hands and hum Moon River while folding laundry. On weekends, she'd take me to the old bookstore downtown, the one that smelled like dust and cinnamon. I remember thinking she was the gentlest woman alive. But there were cracks, even then. Small at first. She'd space out sometimes, staring out the kitchen window long after the kettle had boiled dry. Or she'd forget things, like picking me up from dance class. Once I waited 40 minutes on the curb before someone's dad gave me a ride home. When I asked where she'd been, she said nothing. Just kissed my forehead like it would erase the disappointment. And yet I always forgave her. Because I needed her to be okay. Because if she wasn't, I didn't know what that meant for me. As I got older, the silences between us grew longer. Her smiles got thinner. She started sleeping in longer, wearing the same cardigan for days. Dad barely noticed, or pretended not to. Their conversations became checklists. Bills, groceries, dentist appointments, but never each other. And then came the night I heard them fighting, not yelling, just breaking. I was 10. I shouldn't have heard it, but the hallway carried sound like secrets through a tunnel. I feel like a ghost in this house, she whispered. Then do something, my father snapped back. Get a job. Go outside. Be a mother again. And just like that, something changed in her. The next morning, she was already dressed when I came down for breakfast. Hair brushed, eyes hollow. She made me pancakes with blueberries, the kind I liked. Told me she loved me more than anything in the world. Then she cried in the pantry with the door closed. I didn't know it then, but I think that was the first goodbye. She started disappearing after that. Not physically, at least not yet, but mentally, emotionally, in ways that were hard to name at the time. She'd drift in and out of conversations, forget things I told her just the day before. She'd buy groceries and forget to cook, or cook and forget she'd already fed me. And when she did remember, it came all at once. One afternoon, I came home to find my room spotless. Toys lined up, socks folded, bed perfectly made. She was sitting on the floor with a photo album in her lap, tears running silently down her face. She looked up and said, "You were such a happy baby." I don't know where I went. I didn't know either. Dad, meanwhile, became a shadow that shouted. He worked late, came home tired, said things under his breath he didn't think I heard. She's just not built for this. I didn't understand what this was. Parenting, marriage, life. And still I tried. I became quieter, neater. I stopped asking for help with school projects. I learned to microwave dinners and check the thermostat myself. At 12, I was already a little adult walking on eggshells in my own house. But nothing I did made her come back. I started finding bottles, in drawers under the sink, inside the linen closet behind old towels. Not wine bottles. Orange plastic ones. Some with her name, some without, some prescribed, some not. That's when I realized she wasn't just tired, she wasn't lazy, she was sick. In a way no one was willing to name. And maybe she thought leaving was mercy. Maybe she looked at me, her bright-eyed, too responsible daughter, and thought, "You deserve a better version of me." But I don't know how to become her. Only later did I learn she'd tried therapy. Once. Didn't go back. She'd written journals too, half-filled notebooks with loops of ink that trailed off mid-thought. But none of that mattered at 13. At 13, all I knew was that she left. And I never got to ask why, until now. There are wounds you don't even realize you carry, until you catch yourself bleeding on someone who never hurt you. I got married in my late 20s. He was kind, steady, someone who listened when I spoke and remembered how I liked my tea. For the first time in years, I felt safe. And that terrified me. I kept waiting for him to leave, to snap, to vanish the way she did. He never did. But I still braced for it. We had a daughter, Emma. She was everything I never got to be. Joyful, open, soft in a way I'd forgotten how to be. I loved her fiercely. But there were moments when she asked, "Mommy, do you have a mom too?" And I'd freeze. I told her, "She's not around anymore." I never said why. At night, I'd peek into her room while she slept, her little chest rising and falling, arms sprawled across the blanket, and I'd whisper, "I'm sorry." Not to her. To that part of me that never got tucked in, that still ached for a mother's hand smoothing the hair back from her forehead. Still, I moved forward. I worked. I parented. I tried. But the past finds ways to slip through the cracks. One day, at Emma's school recital, I sat in the front row, heart pounding, camera in hand. She was dressed as a sunflower. Her little voice wobbled as she sang, but she smiled when she spotted me. Afterward, another parent came up to us, a woman with soft curls and too much perfume. She crouched down, looked at Emma, and asked sweetly, "Was that your grandma in the back row waving?" Emma shook her head. "Nope. I don't have one of those." Then she looked at me, right in front of the woman, and added, "My mommy says hers didn't want to be one." The woman smiled awkwardly, gave me that "oh you poor thing" look, and walked away. And I stood there, humiliated, burning from the inside out, because my child had spoken the truth, and somehow that hurt worse than any lie I could have told. That night, after Emma went to bed, I sat alone on the bathroom floor, knees tucked to my chest, just staring at the grout between the tiles. The house was quiet, too quiet. And all I could hear was her voice, Emma's, ringing in my ears. "My mommy says hers didn't want to be one." I hadn't realized I'd said that out loud before. Maybe I did. Maybe I said it once when I was tired or angry or trying to explain the unexplainable. But Emma had heard it, held it, and made it part of her truth, and mine. I thought about calling someone, my husband, a friend, but what would I even say? How do you explain a grief that grows up with you? For days after that, I found myself restless, unsettled, like something had shifted and I didn't know what to do with it. I kept seeing my mother's face, what I could remember of it, flashing in reflections behind windows at the edge of dreams. Then one morning, Emma brought me a shoebox. Old, dented, covered in stickers. Found it in the garage, she said. It's yours. Inside were photos I hadn't seen in decades. Polaroids. Me as a baby. Her arms holding me, her smile tired but real. I didn't even know they still existed. I'd assumed my dad had thrown everything away. But here it was. Proof that at one point, she had stayed. She had tried, and buried underneath the photos wrapped in a worn ribbon was a letter. Folded so many times it looked like it might disintegrate in my hands. I didn't open it, not yet. I just sat there with it pressed to my chest, breathing in all the air I didn't know I'd been holding since I was 13. Some part of her had reached back. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I felt it. A presence, a question. A quiet nudge in the direction of something I hadn't dared consider in years. Forgiveness. I didn't open the letter that day. I put it back inside the shoebox and slid it under my bed. Part of me felt like opening it would make everything real. Final, and I wasn't sure I was ready for that. But the universe, as it tends to do, had other plans. A week later, I got the call. It was a nurse, again, this time from a hospice facility about 2 hours away. The voice on the other end was soft, careful. We have a patient named Linda Carter. She's listed you as her next of kin. It says here, you're her daughter? I almost dropped the phone. My mother hadn't just written a letter. She'd written my name. On a form, in ink, in public. She hadn't hidden me. Not this time. The nurse continued. She's in stage 4 respiratory failure. She asked if you might come say goodbye. The word goodbye hit me like a train. I said yes. I don't remember how. I just remember the car ride there. Emma's lunchbox still sitting on the passenger seat, the shoebox now resting on my lap. The letter inside unopened, my hands trembling the whole way. When I arrived, the building was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels intentional, respectful. The nurse led me down a hallway that smelled faintly of lavender and bleach. And there she was. My mother, thinner than before, more bones than skin. A nasal cannula curled beneath her nose, the machines beside her beeping slow and steady, like they were keeping time for a life that had already started letting go. She opened her eyes when I walked in, blinking hard. Then softer. Melissa? I nodded. I couldn't speak, not yet. She tried to lift her hand, but it barely moved, so I moved mine instead, placing it gently over hers, like I had in that hospital room weeks ago, back when I still didn't know what I wanted from her. Now I did. I wanted a conversation. A truth. A reason. She looked at me for a long time, not like she was confused, but like she hadn't allowed herself to really see me until now. I didn't think you'd come, she whispered. Her voice was thin, paper-like. It cracked on every syllable. I didn't think I would either, I replied softly. But I'm here, she nodded, slowly, like it took all the strength in her. There was silence after that, not heavy, just fragile. Like neither of us wanted to break the moment by saying something too soon, too sharp. Then she said it. I was 29 when I had you, and I thought that would fix everything. I didn't interrupt. I let her speak. Your father, he was strong. He was good in many ways, but I was already broken when I met him. I was already unraveling, and I thought if I became a mother, I could finally hold myself together. A breath, a pause, her eyes glossed over with tears. But you weren't glue, you were light, and I didn't know how to live in the light without curling away from it. I felt my throat tighten, my eyes sting. She looked away. I know I don't get to ask for anything, but if there's space, anywhere inside you, just a sliver, I hope you'll put me there. I reached into my bag, pulled out the letter, unfolded it slowly, my hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. She saw it, and her mouth quivered. I wrote that 100 times, she whispered, burned most of them, but that one made it through. I didn't read it aloud. I didn't need to. She already had. Instead, I slid my chair closer, took her hand again, and said the only thing I could. You hurt me. You changed me. You left a scar I still carry every single day. She nodded, barely. But you're also the reason I am who I am. And if I can't forgive that, then maybe I haven't grown at all. Her tears spilled. Mine followed. And for a moment, we were no longer mother and daughter. We were just two women, sitting in the truth of a wound we both inherited, both carried, both finally brave enough to look at. I didn't stay long that day. After our conversation, the nurse gave me a gentle smile and said she'd need rest. I kissed my mother's forehead, something I hadn't done since I was a child, and whispered, "It's okay." And I meant it. Not as permission, but as peace. It was strange how light I felt walking out of that building, like I'd set something down that I didn't know I'd been carrying for decades. I didn't call anyone. I didn't cry. I just drove. The sky was soft that evening. Dusky blue like the end of a long story. Emma's lunchbox still sat in the passenger seat, the shoebox now back in the trunk. But this time, the letter inside wasn't heavy. A few days later, hospice called again. This time they told me she'd passed, quietly in her sleep, no pain. The way we all say we want to go, even if few of us get the chance. I didn't break, I didn't shatter, but I did feel something shift. At home, I stood in front of the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Not because I looked different, but because I felt unburdened. Later that night, I sat on the floor with Emma and showed her the Polaroids. The ones of me as a baby. My mother holding me, the laughter in her eyes. She loved me, I told Emma. She just didn't know how to stay. Emma was quiet for a while. Then she placed her hand over mine and said, "It's okay, Mommy. I'm glad you stayed." And that was the real healing. Not in the goodbye, but in what came after. In being able to tell the truth to the next person in line and watching them carry it better than you ever could. I didn't speak at the memorial. There weren't many people there. Just a few nurses, a quiet chaplain, and me. I brought a single daffodil, my mother's favorite, and placed it on the small wooden table beneath her photo. I stood there in silence. No rehearsed speech. No grand closure. Just presence. She didn't need my words anymore, and I didn't need to give them. Later, when I got home, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The afternoon sun was filtering through the blinds, leaving stripes of gold on the hardwood floor. I poured a cup of tea, opened a fresh page in my journal, and began to write. Not to her, not about her, but for me. I wrote everything I'd held inside since I was 13. Every ache, every wish, every version of her I'd imagined when I was scared or lonely or angry. I wrote until my hand cramped, until the words stopped sounding like blame and started sounding like release. When I was done, I folded the pages, walked outside, and burned them in the fire pit. The paper curled quickly, then disappeared into smoke. And I swear, as the ashes rose into the air, something left me too. Not her. Not the past. But the part of me that believed I was still that girl, waiting by the window for someone who wasn't coming. That girl had grown up, and she'd stayed. Through all of it. That night, Emma crawled into bed beside me, dragging her blanket and stuffed lion. She didn't say a word, just nestled against my side like she knew I needed her there. And I realized, that little girl inside me, she finally had someone to tuck her into. Not with lullabies, not with apologies, but with quiet, unwavering love, passed down, reshaped, and reclaimed. One generation to the next. It's strange how healing doesn't make a sound. There's no thunderclap. No spotlight moment where the pain vanishes in a dramatic hush. It just softens. Like the way a scar fades, not because you forget, but because your body has learned how to carry it without flinching. These days, I don't think of my mother every hour, but when I do, it's no longer with fire. Sometimes it's just a memory that surfaces while folding laundry. The way she used to hum without words, or the way she folded socks in sets of 3, not 2, just in case one goes missing. It used to break me. Now it just lingers. I've come to believe that letting go doesn't mean you erase someone. It means you stop handing them the pen to rewrite your future. If you're still carrying a weight that isn't yours, a silence that was never explained, a goodbye that felt more like abandonment than release, please know this: you don't need their permission to begin again. And forgiveness? It doesn't always look like a hug or a reunion. Sometimes, it's simply the decision to wake up and not let their absence define your presence. You are not the pain they left behind. You are the life that kept growing anyway. I used to believe closure came with answers, that one day someone would look me in the eye, say all the right words, and make the ache go away. But the truth is, some wounds never get that kind of ending. And still, you can find peace. You can find it in the way you treat yourself gently on the hard days, in the way you love your children with more softness than you were ever given, in the way you decide, quietly, without needing applause, that the pain stops with you. If this story reminded you of someone you used to wait for, someone who left without explanation, someone you never got to say goodbye to, maybe today is not about reopening that door. Maybe today is about closing it, not with anger, but with grace. Maybe you've already carried enough. Maybe you're allowed to set it down. And if you needed someone to say it out loud, I'm proud of you. For surviving, for staying, for trying again, when you had every reason not to. If you know someone who's still walking around with an invisible weight on their chest, someone who thinks they're the only one still hurting from something that happened years ago, send them this video. Let them hear this story. Let them know they're not alone. And if this found you at just the right time, stay with us. There are more stories like this, more moments of truth wrapped in quiet, more endings that aren't really endings at all, just places where the light finally begins to pour in. So take a breath, let it reach all the way down, and if you haven't already, subscribe. We're healing here, one whisper at a time.